I was a good man. I always tried to do the right thing, to be there for my family and friends. I believed in hard work and honesty. I took pride in being a dependable person, someone others could count on. I had a wife and kids. My family was my world. We shared countless moments of joy and laughter. My wife was my rock, and my children were my pride and joy. We were a close-knit family, always supporting each other through thick and thin. I had a job I loved. I worked at a factory, and it wasn't just a job to me, it was a part of my identity. I enjoyed the camaraderie with my co-workers and the satisfaction of a hard day's work. Life was good. We had everything we needed and more. We lived on a street lined with oak trees. It was a picturesque neighborhood, the kind you see in movies. The trees provided shade in the summer and a beautiful display of colors in the fall. It was a place where we felt safe and at home. The houses were old and comforting, their bricks weathered by time. Each house had its own story, its own history. Our home was filled with memories, from the creaky floorboards to the cozy fireplace where we spent many winter evenings. Children played in the park, their laughter echoing through the warm summer air. It was a place where families gathered, where friendships were formed. The park was the heart of our community, a place of joy and innocence. I would sit on my porch swing with my wife watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple. Those moments were our escape, a time to reflect on our blessings and dream about the future. It was a simple life, filled with love and contentment. Then the factory closed. I lost my job. It was a devastating blow. The factory had been the lifeblood of our town, providing jobs and stability for so many families. Without it, we were left adrift, struggling to find our footing. I searched for work, but nothing came. Bills piled up. Every day was a battle to make ends meet. I applied for countless jobs, but the opportunities were scarce. The stress and anxiety were overwhelming, and I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. The bank took our house. The place we had called home for so many years was no longer ours. It was a heartbreaking moment, watching our belongings being taken away, knowing we had nowhere to go. The life we knew, the life we cherished, crumbled around us. The life we knew, the life we cherished, crumbled around us. It felt like everything we had worked for was slipping through our fingers. The sense of loss was profound, and the future seemed uncertain and bleak. We found ourselves facing a harsh reality, homelessness. It was a situation we never imagined we would be in. The uncertainty of where we would sleep each night, the constant worry about our safety and well-being, it was a nightmare we couldn't wake up from.
He blamed himself. He felt responsible for the hardships his family was enduring. The guilt was a heavy burden, and it consumed him. He replayed the events in his mind, wondering what he could have done differently. He felt like a failure. The sense of inadequacy was overwhelming. He had always prided himself on being a provider, and now he couldn't even provide the basic necessities for his family. The shame was unbearable. He had promised his wife a good life. He had vowed to take care of her and their children, to give them a life of comfort and security. Now those promises felt like empty words, and he struggled to find a way to make things right. Now he couldn't even provide a roof over their heads. The reality of their situation was a constant source of pain and frustration. He felt helpless, unable to change their circumstances despite his best efforts. Shame and despair washed over him, threatening to drown him in its depths. The darkness seemed all-encompassing, and he struggled to find a way out. The weight of his emotions was suffocating, and he felt like he was losing himself. He felt lost, adrift in a sea of uncertainty. The future was a vast, uncharted territory, and he had no idea how to navigate it. The sense of direction he once had was gone, replaced by a constant state of confusion and fear. His wife, ever strong, held him close. She was his anchor, the one thing that kept him grounded. Her strength and resilience were a source of inspiration, and she reminded him that they were in this together.
"We'll get through this," she whispered, her voice trembling but resolute. Her words were a lifeline, a beacon of hope in the encroaching darkness. She believed in him, even when he couldn't believe in himself. "We have each other, and that's all that matters." In the face of adversity, their love and commitment to each other were unwavering. They knew that as long as they had each other, they could face any challenge that came their way.
Her words were a lifeline, a beacon of hope in the encroaching darkness. They gave him the strength to keep going, to keep fighting for a better future. Despite the hardships, they held on to the hope that things would get better, that they would find their way back to a life of stability and happiness. The streets were cold, biting with an unforgiving chill that seemed to seep into the very bones of those who wandered them. The nights were long, stretching endlessly as if time itself had slowed down to prolong their suffering. John and his family huddled together for warmth, their bodies pressed close in a desperate attempt to fend off the cold. The thin blankets they had managed to scavenge offered little protection against the biting wind. The park bench became their bed, a hard and unyielding surface that left them sore and restless. Each night they would lay there staring up at the sky, hoping for a miracle that never seemed to come. The stars, their only solace, twinkled above them, indifferent to their plight. They were a reminder of the vastness of the universe, and how small and insignificant their problems seemed in comparison. John spent his days searching for work, any work that would help him provide for his family. He knocked on doors, filled out applications, and pleaded with employers, but the answer was always the same: no. He stood in line at soup kitchens, waiting for a hot meal that would stave off the hunger for a few more hours. The lines were long, filled with others who had fallen on hard times, each with their own story of loss and hardship. He swallowed his pride, accepting handouts with a heavy heart. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but he knew he had no other choice. His family's survival depended on it. He saw the judgment in people's eyes, the way they looked at him with a mixture of pity and disdain. It was as if they believed he had brought this upon himself, that he was somehow to blame for his misfortune. The way they averted their gaze, as if he were invisible, cut him to the core. It was as if he no longer existed, as if he were nothing more than a ghost haunting the streets. He felt the sting of their indifference, the weight of their unspoken scorn. It was a constant reminder of how far he had fallen, and how little he mattered in the grand scheme of things. He was no longer John, the husband, the father, the worker. He was just another homeless man, another statistic, another face lost in the crowd. He was just another homeless man, another statistic, another face lost in the crowd. The man he once was seemed like a distant memory, a ghost of a past life that he could barely remember.
One day I saw my reflection in a shop window. The glass was dirty and cracked, but it was enough to show me the man I had become. My face was gaunt, my eyes hollow. The spark that had once been there was gone, replaced by a dull, lifeless stare. My clothes were dirty, my spirit broken. The man who had once been full of hope and dreams was now a shadow of his former self. I hardly recognized the stranger staring back at me. It was as if I were looking at someone else, someone I had never met before. Where had the man I once was gone? What had I become? These questions haunted me, gnawing at my soul and leaving me feeling lost and adrift. Despair threatened to consume me. It was a dark, suffocating feeling that wrapped itself around me, making it hard to breathe, hard to think, hard to hope. I wanted to give up, to let the darkness take me, to surrender to the overwhelming weight of my circumstances, to disappear into the shadows, to become another forgotten soul lost in the city's underbelly. It seemed like the easiest way out, the path of least resistance. But then, I would see my wife's face, her eyes still shining with a flicker of hope, and I knew I couldn't give in. Her hope was a lifeline, a beacon that guided me through the darkest of times. I had to keep fighting, for her, for my family, for myself. The fight was hard, and the road was long, but I knew I couldn't give up. For her, for my family, for myself. They were my reason to keep going, my reason to keep fighting, my reason to keep hoping. And so, I pressed on, one day at a time, one step at a time, determined to find a way out of the darkness and back into the light.
One cold morning, John sat on a park bench. He was tired, he was hungry. The biting wind cut through his thin jacket and he shivered uncontrollably. His eyes were hollow, reflecting the emptiness he felt inside. Days had turned into weeks and weeks into months since he had lost his job, his home, and his sense of purpose. The park had become his refuge, a place where he could blend into the background and be forgotten by the world. He had lost all hope. A woman approached him. She seemed out of place in the bleak surroundings, her presence almost ethereal. Her steps were light and her demeanor was gentle, as if she was afraid to startle him. John barely noticed her at first, lost in his own thoughts of despair. She had kind eyes and a warm smile. Her eyes sparkled with a kindness that John hadn't seen in a long time. It was as if she could see right through his disheveled appearance and into his soul. She knelt down beside him, bringing herself to his level, and extended her hand. She offered him a cup of coffee and a sandwich. The steam from the coffee rose in the cold air, and the aroma was intoxicating. John hesitated for a moment, unsure if this was real or just another cruel trick of his mind. But the warmth emanating from the cup was undeniable. He took them, his hands shaking. The simple act of holding something warm brought tears to his eyes. He mumbled a thank you, his voice cracking from disuse. The woman didn't seem to mind. She simply sat with him, her presence a silent comfort.
"Don't give up," she said. Her voice was soft but firm, carrying a conviction that John had long lost. It was as if she was speaking directly to his heart, bypassing the layers of doubt and fear that had built up over time. "There's a place that can help you." She spoke of a center that offered more than just food and shelter. It was a place where people could find hope, rebuild their lives, and regain their dignity. Her words painted a picture of a sanctuary, a beacon of light in his dark world.
She handed him a card. It was a simple gesture, but it felt monumental to John. The card was a tangible link to a future he had stopped believing in. It read the Hope Center. The name itself was a promise, a lifeline thrown to him in his time of need. He traced the letters with his finger, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over him. John looked at the card, then back at the woman. Her eyes were filled with encouragement, urging him to take the first step towards reclaiming his life. He felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Her words were like a lifeline, a glimmer of light in his dark world. They pierced through the fog of despair that had enveloped him, offering a path forward. For the first time in months, he felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. It was a fragile thing, easily extinguished, but it was there, and that was enough to make him want to try. He went to the Hope Center that day. The building was unassuming, but as he walked through the doors, he felt a sense of warmth and welcome that he hadn't felt in a long time. He was welcomed with open arms. The staff greeted him with smiles and kind words, treating him with a respect that he had forgotten he deserved. They gave him food and clothes. The simple act of receiving clean clothes and a hot meal felt like a luxury. It was more than just sustenance. It was a reminder that he was still human, still worthy of care. They offered him a bed and a shower. The bed was soft and the shower was warm. As he washed away the grime of the streets, he felt like he was washing away the layers of despair that had clung to him. Most importantly, they offered him support and guidance. They didn't just see him as a homeless man, they saw him as John, a person with a past, a present, and a future. They listened to his story, his fears, his dreams. They didn't judge him, they didn't pity him, they offered him a safe space to be vulnerable, to share his pain and his hopes. They saw him, truly saw him for the man he was. A man who had fallen on hard times but was determined to get back on his feet. Their belief in him was a powerful motivator, giving him the strength to believe in himself again.
A counselor at the center, a kind woman named Sarah, helped him create a plan. She sat with him, going over his options and helping him set realistic goals. Her patience and understanding were a balm to his weary soul. She helped him find a job at a local grocery store. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The job gave him a sense of purpose, a reason to get up in the morning. She enrolled him in a program to earn his GED. Education had always been important to John, and the opportunity to continue his studies was a gift he hadn't dared to hope for. She gave him back his dignity, his sense of self-worth. With each small victory, he felt himself growing stronger, more confident. She showed him that there was still good in the world, that people cared. Her kindness was a beacon, guiding him out of the darkness and into a future filled with possibilities.
Life wasn't easy at first. John worked long hours at the grocery store. He studied hard for his GED. He attended counseling sessions at the Hope Center. He learned to cope with his trauma. He learned to forgive himself. Slowly but surely, John began to rebuild his life. He moved his family into a small apartment. He started saving money. He even began to smile again. He realized that his experiences, while painful, had changed him for the better. He had learned the true meaning of resilience, the importance of community, and the power of hope.
I discovered a passion for helping others. I volunteered at the Hope Center, serving meals and offering words of encouragement to those who were struggling. I knew what it was like to feel lost and alone, and I was determined to be a source of light for those who were still in the darkness.
John's journey was far from over, but he was no longer defined by his past. He was a survivor. He was a beacon of hope, and he was just getting started. Narrator: if you found John's story inspiring, please subscribe to our channel for more uplifting journeys.